Okay, it's 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. The October 21st meeting of the LACERA Audit Committee. I am Joe Kelly, Chair. Um, Perla, can you take a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kelly. This meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting, so I will do a roll call of all the trustees to confirm attendance. Mr. Knox and Mr. Oakham are not present today, so do a roll call. Mr. Bernstein,
Here.
Ms. Gray,
Here.
Ms. Sanchez,
Here.
Mr. Kehoe,
Present.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
From the Board of Retirements, Ms. Zapanta, Mr. Moore, Mr. Robbins, Mr. Harris, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Santos. From the Board of Investments, we have Mr. Green, Ms. Greenwood, Mr. Jones, Mr. Santos, Ms. Greensburg,
Ms. Ginsburg.
Ginsburg, thank you. Staff participating in the meeting include CEO Santos Craigman, Deputy CEO Louis Lugo, AEO Laura Guglielmo, AEO JJ Popowich, and Chief Legal Counsel Steve Rice. Internal audit staff include Richard Bendel, Leisha Collins, Christina Logan, Catherine Tunn, Nathan Amick, George Lundy, and Gabriel Tafoya. Interim System Division Manager Kathy Delino, Interim Systems Division Manager Sami Vong, Interim Chief Information Security Officer Bob Schlofeld, Quality Assurance Division Manager Bernie Buenaflor, Bernie Division Manager Carlos Barrios. Staff include Louis Gittins and Kevin Hawkins. Consultants including Jenny Trota, Sarah Pavlik, and Terry Olishnik from Plant Moran. And our audit committee consultant, Robert Griffin. Trustees, if you would like to be placed in a queue, please use the Zoom chat option. At this time, we'll ask all meeting participants to mute their mics until you're ready to speak. And now we may proceed with the agenda.
Thank you, Perla, for that. On item number 2, approval of the minutes, I'm going to ask without objection that we move this to our next meeting. Richard and I have identified a few issues with the minutes, and I think it's more prudent to bring just back a corrected document rather than to go through each of those revisions in today's meeting. So without objection, that will be the order. On item number 3, public comment. Do we have any requests for public comment, Perla?
No public comment at this moment.
Thank you very much. On item number 4A, Mr. Rice, do you want to kick this off and then we have a question?
Yes, the agenda item as stated is overbroad in that it refers to the Board of Retirement and committees. The reference should simply be to the Audit Committee. While the agenda item is overbroad, the memo attached is correct. Because the agenda gives notice that this is a committee matter and relates to and states the subject matter, and because the memo is correct, it is permissible under the Brown Act for the matter to proceed. However, if there is a motion, it should be clear that it relates only to the Audit Committee and not to the Board of Retirement and its committees, its separate committees.
Okay, Mr. Keogh?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion based on staff recommendation there for item A.
Okay, I'll second it. Mr. Bernstein?
So my question, and it actually applies a little bit more broadly, this is a 30-day extension, but we probably don't meet in 30 days. Do we need to actually set up meetings every 30 days, literally just to gather to continue this? Or if we don't, do we default into having to meet in person? And frankly, because we only meet once a month on the 2 primary boards, the issue could arise that it could be more than 30 days.
Yes, no, we don't have to have a special meeting. This has been a subject of discussion among various public agency counsel. The legislation doesn't actually address this point. What it states is that an action is effective only for 30 days. So we're only going to have one meeting in the next 30 days. At the next meeting, we'll do another one of these, and the committee can approve it and hold a teleconference meeting at that time.
So this motion is actually to give us permission for this meeting, not for the next meeting.
Correct. It would not apply to the next meeting if it's more than 30 days from now.
Thank you for clarifying. I'm in support of the motion.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, can we do a roll call, Perla?
Yes, Mr. Bernstein,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes,
This motion passes unanimously.
thank you very much. Moving on to non-consent items A, recommendation submitted by Richard Bendel and Alicia Collins that the audit committee approve the engagement of IIA Quality Services to conduct an external quality assessment of the internal audit division, and there's a memo dated October 13th, 2021. Mr. Keough?
Thank you. So I have a concern about this item. I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the committee. I want to be very clear, this is not about, this is about process, not about specific individuals or the firm itself. I have deep trust in all the individuals. I have deep trust in this firm, but the process itself, I think, needs to be reevaluated, and I can't support the item as it's listed. Right now, we're hiring a firm to conduct the audit of our internal audits process. Yet the RFP was prepared, presented, and the recommendation was given to us based upon recommendations of the internal audits group, which will then be the one that's being audited. So I think from an outsider perspective, looking at this, there should be a lot of red flags with that. We don't hire auditors to audit ourselves on those type of situations, especially when we have such a broad range of experience and oversight here, both in this committee as well as in the organization. So I would like to recommend that we send this back to staff, that staff develops a RFP review committee that does not consist of a majority of internal auditors, and most likely should not include anybody from the internal audits group. Review the RFP submitted and resubmit a recommendation to this committee. That will be my motion and my recommendation. Ultimately, we might get to the same spot. It might be the same recommendation from the review, but I would like that outside review on that. I would also like to recommend that Mr. Kelly, as the chair of this committee, have the opportunity to survey the committee and see if any board members are interested on sitting on that RFP process. So my motion is to recommend to staff and to review and bring it back to us.
Understood.
And I would
Mr.
second that motion. It's very convincing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bendel, can you comment on Mr. Keough's concerns here?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and trustees. Mr. Kehoe, this is standard practice for this is a peer review. In a sense, it's an audit of internal audit, but it's standard for in a peer review to engage the peer reviewers, for internal audit to engage the peer reviewers, and that's standard practice. It's not so much an independently engaged audit of LACERA. So this is the appropriate way for us to go about that.
May I make a comment?
Mr. Griffin, can I have Mr. Griffin comment?
Yeah, 1 second. Mr. Bendel, it's an appropriate way. Is it the only way to identify the retained firm?
You know, I'd like to hear from Mr. Griffin if he's available to answer the question. I'm not really sure I have an answer to that.
Okay, before Mr. Griffin answers, how did we retain KPMG to conduct their recommendation follow-up? Was internal audit? Staff
That was done
representative.
differently. I believe that was a
That
more
was separate.
independent review. That was a little different. It was similar in a sense in that it was a independently engaged review
Was
by
it-
the audit committee.
May I make a
It was an
comment?
ad hoc committee of the committee, and
Mr. Bindle,
but that
Mr.
wasn't
Bindle, stop.
standard peer
Stop.
review.
Yep.
My question was there internal audit staff on the evaluation committee for the KPMG audit?
No.
There was not.
May
Okay.
I make a comment on that?
Yes, Ms. Sanchez.
So when I initiated the KPMG audit, but that was a very specific audit of internal practice. And so it absolutely made sense that there be, I think we had a small subcommittee. I know we had a small subcommittee to make the recommendation. But however, the practice of doing the peer review was already in place when we did that. And this has been a standing practice. And I guess what I'm curious is, what is the process issue? Because I think the intent of the peer review of audit practice is to compare using IIA practices, and obviously IIA knows the most about those. Is Mr. Kehoe, is your kind of question about this that if we're going to conduct a peer review, that the selection of the firm that does that peer review and standards, that just sort of process review, that firm be selected by an organization, people other than people in internal audit who are about to be reviewed? Or is there is that, I was going through your comment as you were stating it. Is that sort of the crux of where you are? Is it simply the selection of the auditor itself?
Yeah, so that summarizes my concerns right there, is that the RFP process was reviewed by the chief internal auditor as well as the two principals. I know that Steve was on it as well, but it was all internal to internal audits. And from a outsider perspective, looking at this, it would be beneficial if the firms that submitted valid RFPs were reviewed by external sources. I do think that the RFP process itself is a check and balance to make sure that those who are selected are going to be able to perform the job and do the functions in that. But as far as the specific firm, it should be somebody from the outside. And I liken that to, if I was going to audit the LA County Sheriff's Department, do you want the LA County Sheriff's Department making that selection on who's going to be auditing ourselves? Or is it better when we have such a large pool of individuals, i.e. Mr. Kryman, Mr. Kelly, that could put together a process of selection that would be able to find a good peer reviewer, but not selected by me? That's I think what I would think that everybody would want to see in this. So I do understand the process has been there for a while, and we do this every 5 years or so, I believe the requirement is. But when looking at this and reading it, it just makes sense to me to do it fairly and openly. And ultimately, it might turn out that the RFP reviewers who review the existing RFPs makes the same exact recommendation that we have in front of us, but it'd be easier to swallow if it's coming from outside of internal audits than rather than inside.
Yep.
Like I said,
Okay,
it's not, I
I
don't want it to
understand.
be, I don't want it to be an attack on internal audits, because I don't have any personal concerns over it. But I believe from the outside looking in, and from the whole purpose of this is auditing, we should have a process in place where we're not selecting it, having our own people.
I understand. And in this particular case, it wouldn't, the RFP has already been run, meaning that it would just be someone else reviewing the submissions. Meaning that you're not putting this back 6 months, you're potentially just putting it back one meeting.
Absolutely.
That's
Got
right.
it.
Mr. Griffin, can you comment on Mr. Keogh's suggestion?
You know, I think it's a good comment. And, you know, in public accounting, we're concerned about independence. And once again, it's not a reflection on any of the parties. But I think when we talk about independence, you know, we want people that are objective and in a position to give a fair assessment. And so you do want to make sure that the process will result in something just by virtue of the fact we're having this conversation. Certainly there's question that, you know, well, you just chose somebody to probably give you the easiest evaluation. So I, you know, and I have to liken this to public accounting because we're always concerned about the perception as much as the reality. So by, you know, by virtue of trustees being concerned about it, I think, you know, you should evaluate and maybe go back to look, you know, reevaluate the proposals submitted. But I do think whoever is involved in any evaluation should have some basic knowledge of internal audit and the principles involved.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Griffin, how much flexibility is there in terms of the evaluation process or what's to be evaluated? In other words, does the IIA publish a standard evaluation kind of toolkit, and you must go through these 18 steps in this way in order to say that you do this kind of work? In other words, is there a lot of flexibility here for the entity doing the work?
I don't know that I can answer that question in terms of the standards.
Okay, Richard,
sorry,
can you address that question?
It is prescribed. The EQA process, the quality assessment process, is prescribed by the standards. I mean, they go through the different standards and you know, evaluate us on a checklist of. So it is a formulaic approach.
Okay, so whoever we choose
prescribed by the IIA.
So wherever we choose is going to do the same steps. It becomes an issue from Mr. Keogh's perspective about whether or not potentially there's too much influence by internal audit at any part of this process, specifically the payment. Ms. Sanchez?
No, actually, I was going to say the exact same thing that Richard just said. It is a process that is prescribed.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any other comments. We have a motion and a second. I'm going to support, I'll just comment, I'm going to support Mr. Keogh's motion. It's not unreasonable to me. I do think, though, the committee should consider that we're setting, in my mind, we're setting somewhat of a precedence regarding independent reviews of audit's work or of audit. I will volunteer to be on this committee if the motion passes myself, and I would entertain a request from others to be on as well. Mr. Rice?
Yes, I think the comments that Mr. Keogh and Mr. Griffin have made are very sound. As far as what the IIA recommends, I just simply wanted to point out as a point of information that the IIA does address the request for proposal process and states, I'm reading from the IAA guidance at this point, at this time, that organizations should request proposals from providers that will be mutually acceptable to the CAE audit committee and possibly management. And then it goes on to talk about the qualifications of the provider. The salient point there is the role of the CAE, not necessarily to fully control it, but to participate. And I think that it's within Mr. Keogh's motion that internal audit might participate but would not control.
Understood. Okay, I don't see any other comments. Let's put this for a roll call vote then.
Mr. Chair Kelly, I would suggest that at least from my office's side, that Ms. Guglielmo sit on that particular panel as well.
Okay.
Panel, so we have two. It would be, I think, a good idea to select the three individuals at this particular juncture.
I will volunteer to be one. Is there anyone else from Audit Committee? who's interested?
Respectfully, I don't understand the timeline. It's unusual to have to approve something like this, and the chair or Mr. Bendel can select it. It seems curious that we're going to tie in so specifically. The
Okay.
motion is simpler and to me better than tying in this stuff right now.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein, for that. I agree with you. So if you're
And-
interested in serving on the committee, let me know.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, Mr. Chis.
If the motion would also simply allow for you, Mr. Kelly, to appoint a third person to serve on a committee that involves the CAE and a member of the executive committee chosen by Mr. Kryman, and somebody from audit chosen by you, which may be yourself, then that just leaves the possibility, we don't have to go through the process of raising hands right now.
So, but my motion was that Mr. Kelly, in conjunction with the CEO, would be able to
Got it.
make that selection. So
Yep, that's there. Then we're good.
I think we're fine with
Thank
that.
you.
Okay. So, Perla, can we roll call vote on this one, please?
Bernstein,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe,
I
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, for a nice discussion. Item number B, recommendation submitted by Mr. Bendel and team that the audit committee approve engagement of, I don't know how to pronounce this, Edie or Ide
I
Bailey?
think it's
Ide Bailey?
Ide Bailey.
Ide Bailey, to perform an external review of the human resources recruiting process. Okay, Mr. Bendel?
Good morning again. I'm going to pass this on to Catherine Ton, Senior Internal Auditor, to present.
Okay, good morning, Ms. Tan.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kelly and trustees. We are asking that the Audit Committee approve engagement of Ide Bailey to perform an external review of the Human Resources Division's recruiting process. To provide some background, at the April 2021 meeting, the Audit Committee approved internal audit's proposed pool of 7 firms to perform audits, advisory, consulting, and special projects on an as-needed basis. In September 2021, internal audit issued a request for bids to the pre-qualified firms to perform a comprehensive review of LACERA's HR recruitment functions. 5 proposals were received and evaluated by internal audit. Internal audit recommends that Ide Bailey, based on the depth of the firm and team's experience in performing HR reviews, its detailed work plan, sample reports, and fees be selected. The time frame for this engagement is 12 to 16 weeks, and Ide Bailey's project fee is $45,000, and they budgeted 250 hours given the scope and objectives of the engagement. So in summary, we're asking that the Audit Committee approve engagement of Ide Bailey for the HR recruiting process review. Are there any questions?
I had a comment, a couple comments. Number one, I was so happy to see the engagement of an external firm to conduct audit work. I think our external firms are an important part of our pool of resources, and it's nice that we're leveraging them. Number two, I did just want to make sure that everyone understands that since LACERA employees are county employees, HR utilizes a number of county processes and systems. And that didn't necessarily that wasn't necessarily evident, I think, in the materials that I reviewed. So I mention that because to the extent a process or system needs to be improved, I just want to make sure everyone's aware that the implementation of those recommendations would involve Mother County. LACERA may not be responsible solely for those processes. And I would just ask that the auditors be clear about whether or not LACERA has jurisdiction over the specific area that it cites. Those are my 2 comments, but I'm really happy that we're engaging, that we're leveraging the pool, because that's been an important thing for me for a long time. So I don't have any other folks in the queue. So I will move the
motion. I'll move it.
Okay,
I'll
Mr.
second it.
Mr. Bernstein's moved it. Ms. Sanchez has seconded. Thank you. Pearl, if we can call the roll.
Mr. Bernstein,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Moving on, section 5 reports. A recommendation follow-up, Mr. Bendel.
Yes, Gabriel Sofia is going to be taking this one. Gabe, you muted.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kelly, members of the Audit Committee. Our recommendation follow-up covers the activity period from July 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2021. There were no new recommendations made during this period, and there were 3 recommendations implemented in the Benefits Division. There are currently 24 recommendations outstanding, 6 in Benefits, 2 in FASD, 2 in the Investments Division, 6 in Quality Assurance, and 8 in Systems. A summary report that contains each of the audit recommendations for each division is attached in Attachment A. Also, a representative from each division is prepared to address any questions the committee may have. So we would be happy to address any questions the committee may have at this time.
Hey, I had a few questions in general. I think I thought as part of the KPMG work that Ms. Sanchez referred to previously, that the actual approval of extensions was limited to certain members of the management team, i.e. the CEO or DCEO. And in your reporting, you write in the passive voice, which I can't stand, because I don't know who the actor is. I don't know who granted this extension. So you say management extended or management confirmed the extension. I would just like to specifically see either a position title or a name so that we can then align it with the agreed upon criterion. As well, I'm a little bit concerned that there is, I'm a little bit concerned that audit is classifying recommendations as on track and coding them green, but based on solely representations from the business unit. So, for example, on page 2 of 9, the death legal unit, you say on track, but management confirmed they're on track to implement this recommendation by 1/29/22. Okay, that's 3 or 4 months from now, and yet it's coded green. Now, if I were to take this report in February of 22, and this is then coded yellow because it's not on track, there's a disconnect in my mind between what you're doing to verify something's on track and your application of the label. I think we need a separation of coding here. In other words, you may code something as the business unit says it's on track. Fine, maybe it's light green, but then I want to know you verified it. Either it's been implemented and you verified the implementation, or you have verified the steps they've taken to ensure that it is on track. Maybe that's a dark green. I don't know. But there's got to be, in my mind, there's got to be a differentiation between what you report from the business unit and what it is you've actually verified. And I don't see that in this report. That's a concern of mine. My other concern is that in some instances, I think you're in the after you release an audit report, that audit report is like the Bible. It never changes. It's sacrosanct. And yet it appears, at least in one instance, that your post-implementation, post-release of the audit report, you're negotiating what was a recommendation, what wasn't a recommendation. There's an example here in this report about the death legal unit and automating a certain process. And there's a notation as to whether or not the audit report included a recommendation to automate the process. I gather there may be some pushback from the business unit. The audit report's the audit report. There's no negotiation post-release of the audit report about what the recommendation was. You may make a determination a year or two after release that the recommendation is no longer appropriate given other processes in the operation. But the recommendation is the recommendation. So I think there's got to be a better way to differentiate between representations from the business unit and your verification of those representations. And I don't see that in the current formatting. And then I would just caution you not to negotiate findings or recommendations that were included in previous audits.
Okay,
Mr. Kelly, if I may, the green color just denotes the length of time that the recommendation has been outstanding. It's not an indication of, it's simply that the recommendation has only been outstanding for less than 1 year is the green color. And they're not colored purple until they're implemented. So on some of them where we say on track, on others we say pending audit verification. Some of them management has indicated they've completed, but we haven't had an opportunity to validate the completion of the recommendation. The green simply denotes that it's less than a year, the recommendation is less than a year old. And
So
to
on
the
page,
second,
okay, so just to follow up on that, on page 3 of 9, where we talk about FAS, FASD, and board and staff education, the target was June 30th, 2020, and it was September 2020, then it was December 2020. Now there's an approved extension date to 9/30/21, which is gone, and yet it says on track, approved extension.
so
They said they were on track in September 2020 to complete this recommendation. That doesn't make sense to me.
So we've validated that they are on track for this extended date, the date of, in this case, 9/30/2021. So they were on track to complete that. The timing was a little close on this one in that we haven't gone back and validated whether it's completed yet, and we'll be doing that. But as of the last reporting, they were on track. So the extensions in this case were out of the control of the Financial Accounting Services Division. And a lot of these, delays were related to the Mosaic audit that had to be completed and other things that were done prior to them being able to implement these recommendations.
I'm just very cautious about believing if they've received 3 prior extensions, I'm very cautious about believing that they're going to be successful on the 4th. And I'm very uncomfortable with just because an extension has been granted with a clarification or classification that they're on track. That's my concern. You really, are you really on track? In other words, I think there's got to be a true up here also, Santos, with the business units. Come on, really. I mean, how likely are you to get this stuff done? And you're saying on track based solely on the fact the extension has been approved. When they have not been when they probably have said the same thing 3 times prior and they haven't made it. So maybe it's just maybe the classification is just the extension has been approved, but you don't make any observation about that. In other words, when you say on track, it implies to me you're suggesting legitimacy here, either to the reasons for the extension or the steps they're taking to get it done by September 30th. It's still not done today in this October, a month later.
One of the things we want to,
that's my concern.
One of the things that we want to ensure is that I think it was in the exercise we went through in improving the process and I think corroborated by KPMG's review is that, just having the responsible parties, kick the can down the road without us doing any validation to ensure they're on track is not what we want to do. We've incorporated now the approval process that it does go through the chief audit executive, goes through the assistant executive offices and either the DCEO or the CEO, depending on the risk level, to get the extensions approved. There's definitely some accountability to management when requesting these extensions, that they are, and that's one of the things we validate, is that they're on track in providing it. Before I take this to Mr. Lugo, Mr. Kryman, I want to obtain assurance that we're not just, kicking the can down the road and going to keep kicking it down the road, that we are in fact on track. So it is something that continues to be a challenge, and of course there's priorities but I think that management throughout the organization is taking the recommendation follow-up process a lot more seriously. And you know, we hope to minimize these extensions in the future.
Okay, well, just so everyone knows, I'm taking the next report and I'm going to compare it to this report. And we'll see how many of the extensions granted this report are still not complete next report. Because that will speak to then, I think, the quality of your review or questioning to the business units. Because how this appears to me is every quarter or every 6 months, somebody just submits a new extension, somebody grants it. And then Audit comes along and says on track. So that's a concern of mine. And I just wanted to be clear about that. Are there any comments or questions regarding this item?
Yes, Chair Kelly, this is Louis. If I can just briefly speak on the business side. We have been working collaboratively with internal audit as it relates to all the recommendations. And we certainly understand our accountability in meeting timelines. So we are working diligently with our management team, and we will be working with them and ensuring accountability as it relates to the extensions that have been outlined within Mr. Bendel's report. So I just wanted to make sure that the board knows that we're taking it seriously as well, and certainly not kicking the can down the road.
Thank you very much for that.
Chair Kelly, I also just want to interject. I don't want you to leave with the impression that Mr. Bendel and I are negotiating extensions and trying to develop a report that looks good. Quite frankly, we meet very, very often. We have a regularly scheduled meeting. I think it's every 2 weeks, I believe. And Mr. Lugo and I and Mr. Bendel and his team get together and talk about what the business units are saying. Mr. Lugo confirms or does additional investigation if needed. We do not, as a staff, the ability to just continue to kick things down the road. There are legitimate reasons why we do grant the extensions. It's a very thorough process. It's a lot more transparent than it was in the past. And so we are communicating. We do, from a management perspective, take these recommendations incredibly serious. And you can tell by the number of purple items that continue to flow through the process since we began this particular journey back in February of 2019. And so I don't like giving extensions. I think just from past practice, you kind of know that about me. And so if there is a legitimate reason, we do allow it, but it is not something that is just granted blindly. Mr. Lugo, JJ, and Laura are very active in making sure that these particular recommendations are taken seriously and implemented by the business units.
Okay, thank you very much. We can move on. Mr. Bendel, item B, recommendation follow-up sensitive technology areas.
Again, Mr. Tafoya.
I'll take that. Thank you. Our IT-sensitive recommendation follow-up covers the activity period from July 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2021. As of August 2020, internal audit began to report to the audit committee a summary of recommendations being monitored related to system and network security audits and assessments. There are currently 5 sensitive information technology engagements detailed on Table 1 that internal audit has been monitoring. The recommendation outstanding count of 71 has been reduced down to 33 recommendations in progress. This was a result of removing 20 recommendations completed during prior periods and 18 recommendations implemented during this reporting period, for a total of 33 recommendations in progress. These 18 Clear Skies recommendations have been implemented as a result of the LACERA.com website redesign. I also wanted to take this moment to thank Kathy Delano and her team for being very proactive in addressing and implementing these 18 recommendations, and for setting up all meetings and providing the appropriate support documentation to validate closure of these recommendations. A summary report that contains the number of recommendations by engagement status can be seen on table 1. And staff are prepared to address any questions the committee may have. But just please remember that due to the sensitive nature of these IT recommendations, we cannot provide additional details. Are there any questions?
I would thank all those involved. IT is a sensitive area, and there's been some significant work put forth here. So thank you to everyone involved. I don't see any questions.
I echo those comments.
Okay,
Me too.
everyone, full board. Thank you, Mr. Linden. And thank you to all your staff who help me all the time on my issues. Item C, Mr. Bendel, KPMG External Quality Assessment.
Christina Logan will be taking this one.
Good morning, Ms. Logan.
Good morning, Chair Kelly and Audit Committee members. As you may recall, in February 2021, KPMG brought forth their audit report of internal audits recommendation follow-up process. They provide in the report, they provided 5 observations and 14 recommendations. We've been working to address each of these recommendations, and as of, I think the report date was, or the memo date was October, we have closed out 12 of 14 recommendations. The 2 that remain are in progress, and we are making strides to address them. The first that is still opened is assessing the high-risk findings that were previously closed and determine if the areas need to be re-audited. So as part of our mid-year risk assessment, we are doing this. We've requested, or we've started a project to look back the 10 years and address this. The second open recommendation is a rollout of a communication program that's presented to key stakeholders. And we are working with communications. They have an update to the intranet page. So we're working on getting the materials out for the intranet page. And after the materials are developed, we do plan to have a meeting. I think we had said MAC meeting, brown bag, and then also audit committee meeting.
Christina, related to the redesigned intranet, are you highlighting some of the positive impacts or effects of internal audit? In other words, to give staff an example of the value, even though many staff might think that internal audit is punitive, but of the positive value or impact internal audit has brought to the organization through just a couple of examples of process efficiencies that have been realized in the agency through your audits, or dollars saved, or anything like that? Are you putting are you trying to kind of push back against this idea, you're just kind of the audit police?
So we didn't actually put any of that information in, but that's something really helpful that we should probably consider. We did try to talk about that it's a collaborative process, and that we're there to help either provide assurance that you have the proper controls in place, or to help make things more efficient. But we don't have any actual quantifiable numbers or anything in there, or specific examples, but that is something that we can consider.
I would encourage you to
Really good
think
idea,
about
Mr.
that,
Kelly.
because
Yeah.
I do think, and make them kind of simple in plain language so the staff can get their kind of arms around them. Yes, Mr. Bendel?
Oh, I just said that's a really good idea. We will definitely consider that and do that. I think it's
Okay,
a great
thank you.
idea.
Ms. Sanchez?
Yes, Ms. Logan, as part of the audit, I recall that document retention was highlighted as an issue. And I wonder, maybe it's either you or Mr. Bendel, did we decide to follow on with an audit of our document retention policy? I cannot recall.
No, we don't have a specific audit on document retention throughout the whole organization, but in each audit that we are conducting for this fiscal year, we are looking at the processes, document retention process. So,
right. I wonder if it's worth, Mr. Bendel, considering as part of the next work plan, a document retention policy audit, just as a matter of course, to be thorough at some point.
We definitely can do that. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's
I think
good for
that's a good idea.
consideration. Mhm.
I think that's a good idea. I'll send you a comment, Richard. There was a statement in one of the recommendation follow-ups about destroying all documents prior to 2019 or something. And it was worded awkwardly because you weren't the business unit wasn't destroying documents based on date. It was destroying documents based on their compliance with the document retention policy. And it was just interesting because the reader was left with the impression that the document retention policy was not the driving force behind the action, when in fact it was. So it goes to Ms. Sanchez's point that one of the positive outcomes of an audit is to increase awareness of certain policies and procedures. And I do think an audit of agency-wide of document retention will get you some host of benefits. Okay, I don't see any other questions. No one else in the queue. Thank you, Ms. Logan. Good work. Mr. Bendel D, status of other external audits not conducted by internal audit. Anything
The only
else?
one that I'm aware of is the standard annual audit that is being conducted by Siegel, our healthcare consultant. They do a claims audit, and one of the providers, Cigna, I believe, is the annual claims audit underway currently. I'm not aware of any other audits in the organization that are being performed outside of our discretion at this time.
Okay, moving on to item E, ethics hotline report, ethics hotline status report.
Catherine?
Hello, Chair Kelly. So we work externally with Navix Global's Ethics Point for our ethics hotline reporting and case management needs. And of the 6 case reports received, 4 have been closed out and 2 reports are currently in progress, which we cannot comment at this time.
And the 6 that were received over what period of time?
Since November 2019, when we started the hotline.
Wow, okay. I don't see any questions. Okay, on item F, Mr. Bendel, audit plan status report.
Ms. Collins is going to be handling this one.
Okay, just a brief overview regarding our audit plan status report. We have provided the status as we always do at each of our audit committee meetings. And the report that we provided is as of September of 2021. There are 34 of the 45 projects that are currently underway in various stages of completion. We've also included in our report some highlights of the audits that are currently in progress, such as, which we discussed earlier, we're going to be starting up with the HR recruiting and hiring process audit. We're in the preliminary stages of a couple of other audits. We have an employee bonus audit that's currently underway, as well as the death claims processing audit. Other projects that we've been working on during this time period include our continued oversight of the SOC Type 2 audit engagement. We also are wrapping up, or we completed our oversight of the external financial audit. We also have participated in a fiduciary review cross-functional team, and we have also completed our oversight of the external audit pool, the external THC financial audits and the oversight of the actual audit pool. At this point, if there are any questions, we can address those at this time.
I have a question. So recently I received via email, I think from you, Richard, a report regarding the CEO's compliance with credit card processes and procedures. Why did that not come to this committee first?
I don't understand the question. We completed
an audit of the CEOs, Mr. Kreinman.
Yes, no, I understand, but we followed the standard protocol. We sent it to the committee for questions, and I think the timing of the issuance of the report was too soon to bring to this meeting. But it'll be coming to the December meeting.
To the December meeting. Okay, fine.
Yeah, being mindful of not trying to rush things through to get it to the meeting. I think we're trying to stay by the metrics and give management their time to address before we issue the report, and then give the committee enough time to address any questions without having to rush it through to get it to the, we just want to stay on track with those
Okay,
protocols.
so we are going, the committee will take action on that report. Okay, fine.
Yes, you will. Yes.
Okay, I don't have anyone else in queue. Let's go to item F. No, we just did item F. Mr. Griffin, consultant comments, you're up. Section
I
7.
really don't have any comments, but SACR's conference is coming up in November. And I will be speaking in the auditor breakout session. And I'll be talking along with a couple of other people about what every trustee should ask their auditor. And I have virtually not met anyone on the committee, and I don't know that I've shaken many hands at LACERA. So if you're attending the fall conference, I may try to at least shake your hand so you can eyeball me in person.
Or at least give a fist bump.
All right, yeah. After I heard you talking about the N95 mask and the difficulty attending something in person, I do it with great trepidation. So.
I'm not attending, but I'll find another way to shake your hand.
I look forward to meeting you, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, section 8, items for staff review, Perla, anything?
Yes, as the return to the approval of the minutes for this meeting, they would be returned to staff for corrections and submissions for approval to the December meeting. And then in conjunction with the CEO and AC chair to appoint committee to review the RFP for external assessment.
Thank you very much. Go to the order. Mr. Keogh,
Nothing on my end.
Ms. Gray,
Thank you for all your hard work, staff. It's amazing how you pull this together. It seems like every month, but maybe it is every 6 weeks. I'm not sure. But to me, it's an amazing amount of information because we have to read it all. So to author this must be even worse. So I thank you very, very much. And thank you, Mr. Bendel, for being the composer or the composer of it all. Thank you. Another Dudamel.
Hardly, but thank you. Thank you to my team.
we want garden box seats the next season. Richard.
Oh, yes, we do.
Mr. Bernstein,
I look forward to being at SACR's. I look forward to meeting you, Mr. Griffin. I am triple vaxxed. I will fist bump or shake hands as you prefer. And I agree with the general sentiment. This has been an informative and productive meeting. Thank you all.
Mr. Knox is not here. Mr. Oakham's not here. Ms. Sanchez? Go to the order, Ms. Sanchez. Okay, I'll go next. So
I'm
happy
sorry,
holidays.
Was that me on good of the order?
Yes.
So I just wanted to thank everyone for continuing to move forward our audit recommendation process in what I think is a particularly challenging time for that. And so I know, it is a difficult job even under the best of circumstances. So I want to just thank you for continuing it under the worst.
Yeah, and to follow up on Ms. Sanchez's point, I'm really happy about the improvements to the recommendation follow-up. It's one thing to actually do the audit work, but it's a different thing to make sure that all the associated recommendations are implemented and resources are allocated to them. And so with the leveraging also of automated systems, and I think you've done that through the teammate expansion, so that's good. I did want to wish everyone a happy Halloween and Day of the Dead celebrations, which are coming up. Okay, we have executive session. It's 9:54. We have 2 items in executive session. I would propose if everyone is fine with it, that we just go straight through to these 2 items. I don't think they're going to take that long. So if there's no disagreement with that, if we can move to executive session, Perla and Bonnie, if you can assist in asking those who should not be present to leave and let me know when that has occurred.